Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone, and welcome back to Adobe Live. My name is Howard Pinsky, Senior Design Evangelist here at Adobe. Hope you're all doing well on this Wednesday afternoon. If you are joining me live on Behance today, let me know in the chat who you are and where you're tuning in from. If you're on YouTube, oh, my ears. Oh no, is it too loud? Hold on. Okay, is that any better? I was testing this beforehand and the audio sounded perfect, but let me know if that's audio's not in sync. Oh, come on. All right. This happened last time and I have zero idea why this was happening. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Everything looks good on my end in terms of the actual audio itself, but let me check one quick thing. Yeah, see, all that looks good. There's no delay. Hold on. Voice was, oh, the intro was loud. Oh, that was okay. Audio, I don't know what's going on. Nothing ever works properly. Hold on. Yeah, there's no delay. I couldn't tell you. But hopefully it corrects itself. If not, you don't have to see my face or listen to my voice anyway. You're just here to watch good old Project Neo stuff. And hopefully the audio problem resolves itself at some point. If not, I do apologize. But let me check one more quick thing. Audio mixer. Yeah, see, that all looks okay. It's so strange because I didn't change my settings from the last time that the stream looked fine. I think it's all the same stuff. But anyways, let me hop over to my screen because you don't want to see my face anyway. I'll just be down here in the corner. And you can still listen and just don't look at me. But we're going to be diving into Project Neo today. Some of you may have seen it during the Adobe Max keynote, which happened just a few weeks ago. And I know there's a lot of interest in Project Neo. I've been diving into it and experimenting over the last few months. Many of you have seen some of my stuff on Twitter or Threads. I'm now posting on Blue Sky, all over the place. Of course, Instagram as well. So if you have any questions about Project Neo throughout this stream, definitely throw them in the chat. I'll do my best to answer. And it's come a long way since it was launched. I mean, it was kind of soft launched a few months ago, officially launched at Adobe Max, but it's changed a lot. So let's start off with what is Project Neo? And in short, it's a 3D web application. Now, you might be asking, why do we need yet another 3D application out there? And that's a fair question, right? But I think what really separates Neo apart from many others that are out there is its integration with applications like Illustrator. And I'm going to show you that during today's stream, how you can export an SVG or open up a vector file directly in Illustrator. But on this main page, projectneo.adobe.com, you can get an idea of what things you can create using Neo. And then if you go to the community section, you can see some trending designs that have been created, some remixable designs, which were created by many members of the Project Neo team. Some of these are really cool looking. So you can dive in and really see how they work. And one feature that the team added not too long ago is this history slider. So if you click on one of these, you can actually see how this was created just by sliding this, which is really cool. And I hope they bring this feature inside of the actual experience as well. So I would love to export one of my designs as like this history thing, which is super cool. Anyways, so hey Val, great to see you, and Umacorn and Patrick and Oliver and Robert. Again, I do apologize if the audio is not in sync with my voice. It doesn't make any sense because I tested this on YouTube right before going live, and somehow once I press live, it unsyncs my technology. Gotta love it. Anyways, I'm gonna hop over to my files and you can kind of see some of the things that I've been creating. Some of these are public, some of these are private, but been experimenting with the Wild Robot. We took our daughter to see that this weekend. Really nice movie. Pixelated hot dog, of course. There's this cat I did not create. This is Luke from one of our the Project Neo team. Little dinosaur. As you can tell, I've been having a lot of fun with Neo. But today I want to show you the UFO design, this one here, and we're going to design this from scratch. And hopefully all of you can either follow along or pick up on some tips and tricks along the way. All right, let's go ahead and press create. And when we dive into here, this is what we see to start. I'm going to turn off the frame. We don't need this right now. Later on, we'll frame it up and then we'll export it over to Illustrator. And we could start off with a box, but I'm actually just going to go ahead and delete that. We do have some settings if you want. We've got color theme, light or dark, which is always fun. Object snapping, you can increase or decrease the scaling of the UI. All right. Here we go. Umacorn has Neo open to try to follow along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the base of the UFO, that kind of like middle section, right? There's a lot of different ways you can create this, but one of my favorite tools inside of Neo is the drop tool. So I'm going to go ahead and select that and boop, pop that into place. Maybe I'll rotate this a little bit. And hopefully my computer cooperates with me because this is you a little bit, and of course I'm streaming at the moment, lots going on, but I'm going to zoom in here and you're going to notice that over on the right hand side we have our properties, which you might be familiar with from other applications. You have things like appearance and our combine options, which I'm going to show you soon, and then you can really dive in and customize this shape. You can dive into the edit section of this shape and kind of push and pull things around like this, and some shapes have more edit options than others. And then you can also rotate. Now, if you're brand new to 3D design tools, some of these gizmos may not be familiar, right? In many tools you can move, or many design tools, you can move things left, right, up and down, but you can't really move them in space. So you have these arrows here, right? These move your designs or your objects, just like that. So you can move it left, right, up, down, just like that. Then you have these curved lines which rotate. And if you hold down your shift key, you can rotate by 15 degrees at a time. Then you have these squares on either side which scale in whatever direction. Now, some of the objects, like the drop, are essentially locked, right? So you can't really elongate it using scale, but you can elongate it using some of the properties that I'll show you in a second. And then you have your scale option at the top right, which scales uniformly, which in this case, because of the drop shape, it's doing anyway, right? And then you can also rotate. So we have this lock option up here at the top. You can lock or unlock the camera orientation. You can rotate a few different ways. You can either drag this handle up here and on the left-hand side, or if you're using a mouse, you can hold down your right mouse button and rotate just like that. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and tweak this shape a little bit so I can increase, decrease the length. We have our radius. You can control the angle to kind of push that up, increase the width if we wanted to. All sorts of things that we can do. We can control the thickness, the corner radius, so it's a little bit softer. But I'm thinking for the UFO, it's probably not going to be too soft, but maybe just a little bit. Stream. Oh, now the stream is skipping. Oh, no. I am so confused what's going on with technology today. Could you repeat the shift will rotate? Oh, yes. So if you hold down your shift key while you're rotating, it's going to rotate 15 degrees at a time. You're kind of seeing it snapping, right? But if I let go of shift, you have a lot more control over the degrees. And you also have some of the properties in the properties over here to the right, which is down here. So if you want a specific rotation, you can always enter it right over here. And hopefully, I got to figure out what's going on with my streaming. My computer, I've got great speeds. I've got all sorts. Let me check my speeds, actually. Yeah, I've got pretty solid speeds over here. Look at that. Of course, you know, the upload speed is what really matters. But I don't understand technology. All right, so we've got our first shape for our UFO, right? And that's looking decent, but we want more to this UFO. So I'm going to also create that underside. So this is the top, right? And of course, we haven't done the window yet, but I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the shape, Command and Control D, just like many other applications. I'm going to move this down. I'm going to flip it upside down. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key and view, just like that. And I might want this section a little bit more rounded, at the bottom. So I'm going to dive into my properties again. Maybe I'll decrease the width, increase the radius, and just kind of finesse this into place. And that looks not too bad, right? Hey, Wade and Jimmy, just saw Neo as an option in my CC interface, downloading and trying. Nice. And you know, the great thing about many of these tools is you can just dive in and have some fun. And that's really how I learned this tool, or many tools for that sake, right? Just dive in, have some fun. There we go. That's looking pretty fancy. All right, so we've got two shapes looking pretty good, right? Sarah's saying Neo is a memory and processor monster. So it does use your GPU quite a bit, which could be potentially causing some issues on my streaming side. But I have done streams in the past with Neo, and it's been perfect. But the last two streams I've done, for some reason, there have been weird tech issues where everything works perfect beforehand, and then it derails. Anyways, and yeah, the team is... don't know if it's better to use Safari. So Chrome is probably the best option to use for Neo at the moment, but the team is working on a lot of optimizations to make sure it functions a lot smoother. All right, so we've got the base of our UFO looking pretty good, but now we want to create that window at the top, where all the little aliens will probably sit. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to grab another tool. I'm going to grab my sphere. And you're going to notice as I'm moving this around, I could just place it wherever, but I can very easily snap it to the center of this object below just by, hovering over and then clicking, which is great. And I can make this larger by scaling it uniformly. Now, the sphere is one of those shapes that you can scale it in different directions. So if I, grab the handle up here or this one over here, I can basically mold it into whatever shape I want in the properties of a sphere, right? So I'm going to make this nice and large. We've got our sphere. Now I could just leave it like this, right? But what I'm thinking is I want some sort of like an indent into these shapes up here so that I can then kind of inset another sphere so that it kind of fits in there. So it's not just like flush, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this sphere here, and because this sphere is on top of the other objects inside of the layers, right over here we have our combine options, and other applications you might be familiar, Pathfinder, there's a lot of different option names for some of these, but I'm going to go ahead and press carve, and what you're going to notice is it's going to cut a nice hole inside of these shapes, right? Which is amazing. Now it's also cutting a hole in this shape at the bottom. And if you did not want that, this is kind of where layers comes into play, right? In a 3D space, the layer order really doesn't matter. But when you're carving and combining options, it does matter. So if I grab this shape down here and just move it on top of the circle or the sphere, you're going to notice that the carve does not affect it anymore, which is probably exactly what I want, right? Now, another thing to note when it comes to carving or repelling, avoiding, all sorts of different things, is that you have blending option down here at the bottom. So right now, the carve is very sharp, right? You're noticing a very sharp line. But if I want to soften that out just a little bit, I can dive into blending and just arrow this up a little bit. Now, of course, I could drag it a lot, but we don't want it that much. So I'm just going to arrow up just a little bit, just to soften out those edges just a tiny little bit, and that looks much better. Jimmy's asking, do the faces automatically connect vertices when overlapped? If not, that'd be a rad feature. I don't believe it does. They kind of just sit into space. But I don't know if anyone from the actual Project Neo team is joining me in chat today. They might be on YouTube side, but if you want to chat, head over to Behance. We can chat over there. All right, so we have this looking pretty good. But again, I want that window kind of inset. So I'm going to actually just use this sphere that I already have and duplicate it. Now, of course, when I duplicate this sphere, it comes over as carve, right? Which I don't want. I want add in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and switch it over there. Now, when I switched it, it still had the blending enabled. So actually you can kind of see how blending works with the add function, right? Or the add shape or whatever you want to call it. right? It kind of blends it really nicely together. But in this case, we don't want that. So I'm going to turn that down, and I'm going to just very subtly, there we go. Maybe I'll move this down a little bit. I want to make sure that down here, I'm either scaling it, or I can also use another carve to kind of remove that bottom section. There's a lot of things that you can potentially do. You know what, let's do that. Let me get rid of this down here. I'm going to grab, let's say, a cube. Make it nice and large. Right, something like that. And I'm going to carve. Much better. There we go. Now it's nice and clean down there. All right, now we have our window, we have our base of the UFO. One thing I might want is maybe around this base, maybe some lights, right? So how are we gonna do that? Well, we could potentially, duplicate this sphere and shrink it down, move it over here, move it down, and then duplicate again, right? Move that over here, duplicate again. No, let's not do that. I'm gonna undo this. I'm gonna go back to where I shrunk it down and it's kind of in the center here. Now, if you go to the properties and you scroll all the way to the bottom, excuse me, right down here, you have repeat options and you have mirror options. In this case, I want a radial repeat. So it's gonna repeat on a circle. Now, I'm gonna move it up just so I can see it. And there's a few different directions, X, Y, and Z. In this case, we want Y. And I can increase the distance and the number of copies. So if I wanted more lights or less lights, I can very easily bump that up or turn it down, and then move it into place like that. Look at that. Now we have fancy lights going around our UFO, right? Now, another combine option that's available is repel and avoid. Now, maybe I want just a little bit of an indent for, where these lights are, right? But I don't want to carve and then duplicate and all that stuff. So what I can do is I can press repel. Now, what you're going to notice is when I do that, nothing's really going to happen. And that's because it depends on your blending. So if I bump up the blending a little bit, you're going to notice we now have a little bit. Now, of course, if I bump it up a lot, it's really repelling into that base, right? So if I move it, look at that. It's kind of fancy, right? But I just want a very subtle repel. So I'll just go somewhere in this range here. Beautiful. And then I can duplicate this. Maybe I'll move it down here. Drop the distance. So now I have some lights on the bottom as well. Now I do have some issue with, because I have that carve down here. So maybe I'll just pop that up. There we go. Now we have lights down there. Maybe we don't need as many lights, so I'm going to just drop the number of copies. Beautiful. And now our UFO is really coming along quite nicely. Now at the top, we might want some sort of an antenna. Don't know what that antenna would be used for, but we're going to run with it, right? So maybe we'll keep it simple at the top. We'll just want a nice little sphere. Just like that. Right? Maybe I'll repel it just a little bit. And then on top of this, maybe we want a straighter edge, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I can either grab a cylinder or a capsule. Both of them will work in this situation. You know what? Let's grab a cylinder. Shrink that down, scale it, and move it into place. Now I might, this might be a little bit too harsh around the edges, so I'm just going to blend it just a little bit. So now we have this fun shape for our antenna, and then on top we'll want one more sphere maybe. Actually, I can move that, just have it keep blending with that shape. There we go. Cute. That works. Does repel leave a small gap between the shapes? It does. So if it's hard to tell here, but actually if I rotate it, you can kind of see what's going on there. right? There's a little bit of a gap. Now, of course, the gap is kind of soft because that's what blending does. But yes, it definitely does leave a little bit of a shape, of a gap. And if I also select avoid, which is another option, you're going to notice essentially the opposite. The spheres are going to try to avoid this shape over here, right? So if I switch that over and right, you can kind of see that it's avoiding a little bit. And if I increase the blending, right, you can kind of see what's going on there. It's definitely a good idea to just dive in and experiment with all the different options. You're certainly not going to break anything. So dive in, have some fun, and then you should get a better idea of what each of the things do. All right, and then maybe at the bottom, I might want that, the beam of light that abducts people, right? So maybe I can just grab this shape here because it does use, maybe. So we could use a drop. Sometimes I just like reusing shapes because it's just a lot easier. And then I might want to increase the length, maybe increase the angle, radius, right? Something like that. That could work. Another option would have been to use something like a hollow cone or a cone itself, right? But I think this could potentially work. It's even got this little bevel at the bottom, which I don't know if it's super necessary. Maybe I'll just drop it a little bit. And then let me move this on top because we can also potentially use a repel over here. Right? Look at that. Now we've got this little hole at the bottom of our UFO where the little beam comes out of. And what's cool is I can just rotate this if I wanted to. Boop. And that hole is going to move with it. Whereas if I had a separate shape carving that out up there, if I wanted to rotate it, I would have to move that shape and then move this shape as well, right? But I can just rotate that, and that little hole moves with it, which is kind of fun. Let's see, increase the, maybe decrease, ooh, actually, I don't know, I kind of like that wider angle. There we go. Jimmy's saying the blending and repel function is amazing, isn't it? It's kind of fun. All right, so this is looking decent, right? Let me change the background. I don't like that green. That default green is just not it for me. There we go. All right, so we've gone ahead and blocked out our UFO, and it's looking pretty good. Now, there's a few different things that we can do from here. If you want to share this for preview purposes, throw it on Instagram or whatever it might be, you can go ahead and press download. Let me turn the frame on, and we'll just do something like 1200 by 1200. Nice and square. I'll move that around. I'm holding down my space bar and just moving just like that. So under download, you can share it as a PNG, a JPEG. Now SVG will not work in this particular mode. I'm going to show you how you can get that working in a second. You can also share it as an MP4 video, and here you have a few different options: turntable, boomerang, and shadow play. Shadow play is kind of fun because it takes the lighting. You can kind of see it there. And by the way, lighting is up here besides styles. You can change the rotation of the lighting, the height, and also the shadow distance, which can soften the lighting a little bit if you want. So right now, the shadow is, very close, so it's harsh. But if you pull that away, it becomes nice and soft. Now, back to download, you also have turntable and boomerang. Now, if I were to select turntable now and then preview, it's likely not going to be perfectly centered, I think. Let's see. Actually, it's not too bad. I was thinking that this shape down here was going to throw everything off. Because if I go ahead and create, actually, let me just duplicate this and move this over here. If I have things over here, and I try that again, okay, maybe something was changed. But sometimes it rotates around the center point of all the objects. But if you want it to rotate around a specific object, in this case, the main sphere, you can select that and then start the preview. That way, it ensures that it rotates around that object, so it stays nice and centered, right? There's also boomerang, which shows like a 90-degree angle, or you can drop that down as much as 45 degrees, right? So you can render that and you save that out. But you may also want to start styling this, right? This clay looking thing looks pretty nice, but I want to add some color to it. So let's dive in and do that. Let's start with the base of this UFO. And over here to the right, we have our appearance section. Now the appearance section will change depending on the style that you use, and we'll get into this in a little bit. But I'm going to dive into color, and we'll select something like a nice pinkish purple. So you have the color, right? And then you have roughness, metallic, and reflective. Reflective should be pretty self-explanatory. You turn that on, it starts reflecting things, right? And if I move these, you're going to notice you can kind of see a reflection, which is kind of nice. I can turn that off for now. Metallic, it's hard to tell, right? But it does add a little bit of a metallic look to the shape. And then roughness is something that a lot of people don't understand. It's a 3D terminology. I think I remember using it way back in the day, you know, when I went to college for 3D design. That was quite a while ago. So it's been around for a while. But essentially, I'm going to try to dumb it down. Roughness all the way at 1 or 100% will leave you with no reflections. It'll be a very rough material, right? Whereas if you go all the way to 0, you're going to notice it's getting a little bit shinier. Actually, this is probably the worst possible shape to explain this. So let me put this back here. Let's go to this shape here. This will probably be a lot easier. Let's change this to a nice blue for this window, right? And at the moment, I know some of you are probably going to ask, are there transparent materials in Project Neo? Not at the moment, but I think that might be something on the radar of the team. So you're noticing here, roughness is pretty much, pretty high, right? There's not much of a difference between 0.8 and 1. But as I start going to the left, you're going to notice we're getting a little bit shinier and shinier and shinier, and then very shiny, right? So now it's super shiny. Almost looks like a window, right? And metallic, you can kind of see a little bit of a difference. And then you've got reflective, which really starts to go crazy. Now, I don't know if I need it that reflective. I think something like this looks pretty good, especially if I'm thinking about a window. And I kind of like that. Now, I should also mention, you might be noticing that there's this white area right here. And at the moment, if I select the object that's carving into these objects here, it uses the color of that shape itself. Now, the team is exploring ways to either avoid this or give people more options, but I probably want this shape to match this purple, right? So I'm going to make sure to set this. I'm going to copy this material down here and then just paste it on this carved material. That way it all matches really nicely. All right. Now these materials here, these are for the lights. Now we can go so many different ways with this, but I might just want to just keep adding some color. Maybe I'll go for a nice orange. Maybe I will add some metallic to it, roughness all the way down, and just kind of tweak this a little bit. There we go. I can copy the material, paste it down here. Now for this down here, I'm not sure if I want to do the same material, which I can easily do by copying and pasting. Maybe. Or I might want to have it like a reflective surface down there. We'll see. Now this down here, this is supposed to be like a beam of light. So I might want to go like a nice green. And then maybe metallic. I don't know about metallic. Definitely want to drop the roughness so it's a little bit shinier. Reflective? Possibly. Let's also try reflective on here. Hey Barbara, great to see you. Ooh, look at that. Now we're getting fancy. That might be a little bit too much. I think that's probably too much. And maybe I can turn off reflective. Nah, I think I'll keep it purple. It's a good color. All right, looking fancy. Now up here, we'll just wrap things up with some, more simpler colors. And we'll do, maybe I'll drop the roughness. Keep it nice and shiny. All right, there we go. So we've gone ahead and applied all of our materials. Maybe at the top here, I'll just give it a little bit of extra color. And actually you're noticing here, right? that when you apply different colors to blended objects, they kind of blend into each other. So you can kind of create some really cool shapes. If I duplicate that, maybe change this to, just to kind of show you, right? And I blend this. If I add the right blending option. Ooh, look at that. Ooh, fancy. I mean, I don't hate this. I don't even know what it is, but I don't hate whatever that is. I'm probably not going to keep it that way, but you get the idea, right? Let me actually move this above. I don't hate it. All right, so we've gone ahead and styled our UFO. Looks kind of fancy, right? But there's obviously a lot more that we can do with it. There are additional styles. There's a lot of things we can do, right? But if I hop over here to styles, we have currently 4. Maybe there's more on the way, I'm not sure. But we have vector art, pixelated, and illustrative. Jimmy's saying, what? The colors blend between shapes? Yes, okay, hold on. We have to, right? Let's have some more blending fun. Circle, sphere. Let's choose a color, a fancy color like a blue. I don't know if I love that color, but we're gonna go run with it. Duplicate. Let's choose a nice purple, right? Watch this. Woo, look at that. Blending is one of my favorite things in Project Neo. It's just so... Now I hate that my voice is probably not synced with my audio still. Because it would just be more satisfying that way. And it works with different roughnesses as well. So I can just reduce that, reduce that. Ooh. I can probably do an entire stream. Maybe I should one day. An hour-long stream of just me blending things together in Project Neo. Should we do that? Let me know in the chat if we should do that. Look at that. Oh, there we go. It's very satisfying. It's like an ASMR, just not with my voice, right? Anyways, and what I might show you later is this also, actually, hold on. Let me go back here. I'm gonna keep those there for now. And there's a reason I'm gonna keep those there. All right, Jimmy's saying, that is bonkers, so many ideas running through my head. Out of sync boops, indeed. I gotta figure that out. I'm so annoyed at the audio issues because it was literally working beforehand when I was testing the stream. And then I go live and everything gets thrown off. There's gotta be a reason. I just blame YouTube, right? Yeah. All right, so back to the styles. Realistic, which we're on now. Vector art, pixelated, and illustrative. I'm gonna start with illustrative because that was our newest style. And this is so cool. It turns your 3D designs into paintings. And there's a few different illustrative texture styles. So as you're noticing, as I'm going through these, isn't that awesome? Wade says, will it blend Project Neo style? And I can control the stroke size of all of these. The edge breakup, key light intensity. Now, ambient texture intensity, I have zero idea what this does. I honestly have no idea. If someone from the team is here, please let me know, because I've been experimenting with this. It doesn't seem to do anything, unless I'm missing something, which is very possible. Blending intensity, which is kind of cool. So what that'll do is if I increase this, it's going to start blending color. Okay. This is why we're in beta. Good times. Nobody saw that. But the nice thing about web apps is everything's right back where I left it. Nobody saw that, right? Right? Nobody saw that. All right, back to what I was talking about. Blending intensity blends the colors together. Right? So you can kind of see over here, it's kind of blending a little bit. Fancy. Yeah. In this case, we probably don't need that. Then you can control highlight color, shadow, sky, bounce, all sorts of different things. But what's really nice is this is still a 3D object. So I can still, you know, hop into I can put my frame back on, hop in here, and then have a turntable of this painterly-like object. Now, if the team is watching, one thing I would love is if there was a way to, you know, we have a few different background options, solid, radial, linear, all sorts of fun things. I want the background to also be painterly. Now, one thing I was doing recently is I was using something like the shoehorn tool, right? And I was doing something like this and like this, and I would rotate it nice and large, move it in the back, right? So I have a little bit of a background back there. So that's an option, but I would also love if I can just have a background option over here under environment that has a little bit of a painterly feel to it, which would be kind of fun. All right, so that is the, hold on. What's my camera? Oh, by the way, you also have some camera options. So if you wanted isometric, parallel, or perspective. And perspective has some different focal lengths, distortion, all sorts of fun stuff. But anyways, all right, so the next style I really want to touch on is, actually, you know what? Let's dive into pixel art very quickly. It's what you would expect, right? You can control, and I think there's a bug right now where the outline is enabled by default. That's probably not the bug, but the toggle is actually in the wrong spot. It should be on the right. Little bug, right? But it's what you would expect. You can turn your designs into pixel art. You can have an outline if you want. You can change the color of the outline. So maybe I can sample the background color, right? And again, it's still a 3D object, so you can then dive in and download and preview that. Fancy. All right, so now I want to really dive into my favorite part of Project Neo, and that's the vector design. So if I go ahead and switch over to vector art, you're going to notice it flattens things out quite nicely. Now, it does have some shaded elements to it, and recently the team added some additional controls to the appearance section. So you can control and choose whether you want shaded, split, or flat. Now let me explain each of these. And you can have them on different objects as well. So shaded will give you the base color, which in this case is blue. And it's also going to add a dark-ish, probably like a black with a lower opacity shadow, and a little bit of a highlight at the top. You can kind of see the highlight right up there. You can also control add an additional highlight based on the light, which is over here, right? Fancy. I'm going to turn that down. And then split allows you to break up the body color, the highlight color, and the shadow color. So the highlight color in this case is the color right here at the top. So if I change this, right, you're noticing I can change that independently. And then we've got our shadow color, which again is this one right here. So I can make that darker, I can make it lighter, I can make it red or purple if I wanted to, right? So you can get really stylistic with your vector designs. Maybe I'll just do something like this. I don't love it, but we're gonna run with it, at least for now. And then I can dive into some of these shapes here. Oh yeah, I should probably also mention, we also have flat. So if you just wanted one solid color, you can very easily just do that, right? Now that might be, I don't know if that's a bug or it's a user experience thing, but I would love if it kept my previous settings here. But let me go ahead and just set the shadow color. That'll do. Perfect. All right, so now I can dive in here and maybe I'll just change. Thanks for joining, Jimmy. I'll see you next time. I'll just do shaded for this. This is fine. Copy the material, make sure it's on here too, paste the material. Perfect. And again, just like pixel art, you can also control the outline thickness. So I can change the color if I want to, or I can just remove the outline completely and have a flat shape just like this. So it's completely up to you whether you want the outlines, whether you don't want the outlines, whether you want a color for the outlines. There we go. So we've gone ahead and created our vector design for our UFO. Let me actually just change, let me change this to flat. There we go, copy, and then paste. Beautiful. So what do we do now? Well, up under the download menu, you can choose SVG if you wanted to, right? Or under the share menu, you can actually send to Illustrator as vectors, which I'm going to do right now. And hopefully, hold on, I might have to refresh. Yep, I'm gonna have to refresh. Give me 1 second. Sometimes it just doesn't work. Beta problems. Hey Nate, great to see you. All right, so I'm gonna try one more time. Share, send to Illustrator as vectors. Is it not working? Hold on. Stream problems, beta problems, all sorts of things. But anyways, let me go ahead and download as an SVG. We'll do it this way. Why not, right? There we go. That downloaded beautifully. Let me open up Illustrator. So I upgraded to the new, it's just non-stop tech issues. I upgraded to the new Mac OS, and half my apps are just not showing up in what's it called? In Spotlight. So let me find it manually. The joys of live streaming, the joys of technology, the joys of everything. All right, so I have Illustrator opened. Sure. And I'm going to drag my SVG into Illustrator. This is what you should see if the send to Illustrator option was working. There we go. Let me hide this stuff over here. And what you're going to notice is that this is completely vector. So the point I really want to make on this whole workflow is, imagine you're a designer, and many of you are absolutely designers. You're working on a project for a client. Client says, I want a UFO. Great. You're in Illustrator, you're designing the UFO, and you get to this point here, right? You send the UFO to your client, and they're like, I like it, but, right? If they were to say, can you make it bigger? Easy, right? We can all do that. It's vector. We can very easy make it bigger. But sometimes they're going to say, I want to see more of the bottom of the UFO. Well, as a designer working in vector, that's not easy, right? You can't just rotate a vector object, at least not yet. Did you see Max? We showed off that turntable thing. Crazy stuff. But if you're designing in 3D, all you have to do is pop back over here and rotate your design. And then, of course, if this was working, it would be able to. Now it's working. I'm telling you, technology is weird. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. But here we go, right? You can just rotate your 3D object in Project Neo and then bring it back over to Illustrator. Send it to the client, and they'll probably tell you to rotate it again. But you don't have to redo the entire UFO from scratch. You just have to rotate it, which is amazing, right? So that, to me, is the major benefit of working with Project Neo, is that Illustrator workflow. And that workflow is going to only get better, right? Some of the bugs will be taken care of. And also, I mean, maybe in the future, there'll be a dynamic link between the two applications. But it's just a huge benefit. Only while streaming. Exactly. Now, I do want to do one thing. Let me actually go back here. And I'm going to duplicate this project. And I want to create a different style for this UFO. And one thing I would love, if the team is watching, and I think I've brought this up to the team internally in the past, is I would love to, if a way to have one document or one scene or one project or whatever it's called, and have multiple styles. Because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn this into almost like a dark mode UFO. right? But I don't want to have to duplicate every single time I want a different style for this UFO. I'm not talking about these styles up here. I'm talking about like if I change all the colors to something darker. I want one document that has all that stuff. All right, let's have some fun. I am going to go really dark with this. Something like that. And then drop this. That looks pretty decent. Metallic is looking good. Do I want, maybe just a little bit of shine. Copy that, paste that here. This looks okay. This might be too reflective, to be honest. I want it like a matte black. That looks decent. Copy, also make sure, paste there, all right. Now what I'm thinking is, you know, the lights are going to be illuminated, right? I might want these to be kind of what really stands out. Let me actually copy this. Val saying, I love this vibe, shock. I should add some purple in there for Val. Oops, no, copy, paste, there we go. That looks a little bit, I'll probably have to work, maybe I'll just paste this. That looks different though. Copy, paste, there we go. Fancy. All right, so up here we might want maybe green on the top and purple on the bottom, just for Val. So I'm gonna choose like a green. Now do we want, let me paste this here for now. What green do we want? How green do we want it? Do we want it reflective? Do we want it metallic? Do we want it, I don't know. That's not too bad. That could work. It matches the vibe of everything else, right? I'm gonna copy the material here, paste it here, and then switch us over to purple. Yeah, there we go. Now that looks fun, right? But I want something glowing. Now, at the moment, there are no additional lights in Project Neo, so you just have basically what you're given here, the environment light, which you can rotate, all sorts of fun stuff. You don't have additional lights. Now, one thing you can do is you can fake glowing or fake additional light sources with the blending option. So if I grab the array of lights here and duplicate this, what I'm going to do is I want to make sure, and I'm pretty sure it is over top of this shape already, but I'm going to switch the combine option over to color and then blend it. Just like that, right? Now that's obviously a little bit too much, and there are no blend modes inside of Project Neo. So we have to kind of rely on the color itself. So I'm just going to drop this just to make it nice and subtle. Something like that. And I'll do the same thing with the purple down below. Color, blending. Now what I'm probably noticing here, because we're not seeing any sort of blending, is layer, in terms of the layer order, it's probably underneath this shape here. It is. So I'm gonna, there we go. Drop that a little bit. All right, that could potentially do. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but it could do, right? And then if you wanted a much larger light, maybe I can just duplicate this. Move this up here. Maybe I'll grab this color here, copy it, paste it, and then turn on color. Now, of course, when you turn on color initially, because there's no blending, it's a very harsh change, right? Which in some cases absolutely works. If you wanted to add stripes around the UFO that weren't like protruding, you can do it using the color mode, right? But if you wanted sort of like a fake light, you can just blend like that, right? So you have maybe a green on this side, and I can duplicate this. Maybe on this side, we can put the purple. Ooh, look at that, fancy. Just nice and subtle. Maybe the background will drop in color a little bit more. Now we're getting somewhere. I think that purple lighting is a little bit too much. And I'm wondering, do we want to go shiny with these lights? I don't know. I keep going back and forth. It's not terrible. but it doesn't match the rest of the UFO, right? Of course, I can change this. Now that's actually, I don't know. I keep going back and forth in my mind of how much shine we want. Maybe the window makes sense, right? But everything else probably doesn't. So let me grab this. Maybe I'll drop the roughness again. No. I mean, I don't hate the reflectiveness. I don't know. See, I think here the light that it's picking up with the roughness is just probably a bit too much. It's just a bit much. It's just throwing everything off, right? So maybe I'll keep that up. Yeah, that's too much. Just too much, right? But I'm liking it. Now, hopefully one day we can get some actual additional lights inside of Project Neo, or an option to illuminate objects. So like this, for example, in the future, hopefully, I don't know if this is coming or not, but I would only need one object here. And then there would be like an illuminate option, which would allow this object to glow, right? Using its base color or even a custom color. I don't know. But let me actually move this down. Oh, there we go. That's probably better. All right, that could do. I'm liking it. I am liking it. So again, you know, just a different style for this UFO. And then of course, if I were to switch over to Illustrator, for example, what you're going to see the that blending option that I was talking about earlier, right? So the colors really nicely blend. You can choose some, ooh, fancy. So you can kind of make it look like a painting if you wanted to, or of course vector art. You can make it really flat looking, all sorts of different things. But I kind of like this realistic look. It's working. I still don't know if I love the roughness here. I don't know. This is what goes on in my mind constantly. Welcome to my mind. Anyways, very quickly before we wrap up, I just want to show you a few more projects that I've been working on. One in particular, where is it? This one, the sofa. Now, just by looking at it like this, right, it looks like a vector icon that I would design in Illustrator or other applications, right? But the beauty of working in Project Neo is it's all 3D, right? And this was very easy to create. This is basically just a cube in the background with rounded corners, right? And then you've got a cylinder. And then here you have a cutout, which is another cube that just cuts out into this other cube at the bottom. And then you have these, I think these are probably a drop. Yeah, it's probably a drop, which is what I showed a little bit earlier. And because I flattened out all the colors using the appearance section over here to the right, it gives the appearance that it's basically a flat icon, right? But what's really cool is I can just select this and then go to download and then create this really fun 3D sofa. Or I think when I uploaded it was like a 3D icon or something like that. But again, this is great for icon designers who want their icons to be displayed at different angles. You don't have to redesign it over and over and over again. You can just use things like the camera orientation and just kind of rotate it just a little bit, snap it into place if you want to, right? And then export that to Illustrator, whatever you might want. And then one other version of that, and this is again why I would love styles inside of each project, right? You can do something even more flatter, so it's almost like an outline view, so it just matches the background, right? But again, it's all 3D, which is fancy. And then one more project that I've been working on a lot is the dinosaur. And I'm going to do a whole stream on creating this dinosaur, but it was done using, pretty basic shapes, honestly. Let me unsnap this. But this is the shoehorn design, so it's a very simple curved object. And then right here, I have a sphere that just helps kind of curve it a little bit more, right? Using the carve and blending. This is a simple sphere. This is another simple sphere. A lot of this is just very simple shapes. This is an elongated sphere, or you can use a capsule, shoehorn with a bit of a cutout. These are little cones or whatever. But yeah, I'll have a whole stream on creating this dinosaur, possibly next time. I think December I'll be back. Hopefully I'll solve all this weird audio problems. I do apologize for that. I have zero idea what's going on, but I will investigate. Looking at my stream now, everything looks fine, but obviously YouTube is having some problems with the audio. But anyway, I do want to thank all of you for joining today. More Project Neo streams are on the way. Definitely follow me on all the platforms. I do post about Neo quite a bit. And stick around. We've got more content coming up, and I'll see you all next time.